Hi, friends. Welcome to our Lakeshore Ethnic Diversity Alliance community conversation. We started these conversations and we will be continuing them weekly. It's our hope that these conversations are taking place that will help us find common ground and address racial and ethnic inequities that are present in our country. The Lakeshore Ethnic Diversity Alliance, also known as LEDA, can help find common ground. I'm Gloria Lara, and I'm honored to be the Executive Director of the Lakeshore Ethnic Diversity Alliance. Since 1996, we have focused on dismantling barriers and advancing equity by working to build and sustain more racially and ethnically equitable communities. Our work is done by meeting organizations, educational institutions, middle and high school students, employers and employees, in our communities face to face. My hope is that the barriers and inequities that have come to light in such tragic ways are deliberately addressed in a way that respects all parties. And now I am pleased to introduce our guest, Jon Covington. He started the radio station WJWC 97.3 The Beat. It's an urban radio station in West Michigan. Jon is a creator and director of Black Man, a documentary that was featured at the 2020 Pan-African Film Festival in Los Angeles. He is a founder of an organization called Men of Color Read, a nonprofit literacy program in West Michigan and Southern California. Jon, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on board.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Jon, looking at your biography and information, you've been involved in many, many different activities. But right now we're focusing on issues, particularly with all the recent events, specifically with Black Lives Matter and racial equity. It seems as if the common denominator in all of your activities has been media, specifically getting important messages across. Can you discuss what it was like starting a radio station? What were the challenges that you faced, especially being a Black man in a white-dominated business?
Sure, and I would just like to say I'm no longer with 97.3 The Beat, but I am the founder of the radio station, as you mentioned. And I think the challenges, I've been asked that question before, and I think that the challenges for me, I kind of put on this go no matter what. So I would say the most part, the challenges probably were attracting advertisers to the platform once it was created, which we were able to do so. But as far as maybe what someone else might say were challenges in founding a radio station, I don't know that I encountered those. Perhaps I did. But again, I have this kind of one track mentality where I just go no matter what. But I would say the biggest challenge probably would be attracting advertisers because you're creating something from scratch, something that doesn't have a track record, something that doesn't exist previous to you starting it. So I would say advertisers was probably the biggest challenge. Okay, we lost the sound there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
All right, there you go. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about advertisers. What type of advertisers were you trying to attract? Were there specific segments, and were there any segments that you were more successful with than others?
Overall, we were extremely successful, and I think that that's due in part to our niche, which was the urban core of the community, and the urban core of the community actually spends lots of money in the community. So it was kind of a no-brainer, I think, for the advertisers who came on board to support the radio station. But we had, I think the biggest attraction was we had local personalities. So we had people on air that are actually here in the community, people that you see in the grocery store, people that you interact with on social media, Facebook and Instagram, et cetera. So I think that was a big attraction for advertisers because you had people who were literally right here in the community and not programmed from some other faraway city and or state to broadcast here locally. So it was a local radio station with local radio personalities right here in the community. So I think that was very attractive to advertisers.
Great. Did you have any advertisers that were somewhat unusual for a radio station?
We had some want to be advertisers that were probably considered somewhat unusual for a radio station, but of course we have the right to refuse any potential advertisers based on what it is our radio station is about, and our radio was about, and our radio station was primarily about empowering the community, embracing our culture and empowering our community. That was the tagline at 97.3 when we started.
Great. Were there any particular guests that you thought were really interesting that you received a lot of reaction from your audience?
Man, there were lots of guests who we received lots of reactions from, because one of the things that we did was we would have people who were in the community, living in the community, come on to the radio station, and we would just share not only what they had going on, but we would also share their life's journey. So we would start with childhood and we would go on up through childhood, elementary school, middle school, high school, higher education, and also their lives, just whatever it was that they had experienced in life. We would often get deep into those things. So it was called The Rising Show. And we literally would have people, guests, become emotional while being interviewed, and also listeners who would listen to us on a regular basis often say things like they had to pull their car over because it got so heavy, et cetera. So that was an ongoing thing, just too many to mention. But well, one segment that we did, I think it was a two-part series we did on a guy by the name of Senku Moody, who at the time needed a double lung transplant. And he was on oxygen 24 hours a day. He was on oxygen 24 hours a day. And if he went without oxygen for just a matter of minutes, he could die. And we had him and his wife on prior to him getting his double lung transplant. And that one sticks out. So that was a pretty emotional show. And he got his lung transplant, by the way, and he's doing great.
That's great to hear. And I mean, it sounds like your show was a combination of different types of stories, as well as, I'm assuming, music as well.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
we infuse the music with talk, because you can't just do all talk. We couldn't in that format, but we kind of snuck the talk in, and it was a lot of talk, but it was infused with music. People can get music anywhere, and my thinking at the time was, and my team was, people can get music anywhere. They can get it on their phone. They can get it satellite in their car. They can get it even on a TV channel. They can get music everywhere. But one of the things that we felt they couldn't get was talk and conversations and things that pertain to them right here in the community of Grand Rapids.
great. I have a question actually coming up in the chat.
Sure.
They wanted to know if you had featured spoken word poets from the Diatribe on the radio station.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Led by Fable the poet, Marcel Price. And we did a segment called Poetry on the Beat. And throughout the day, you could hear poets speaking what it was that they chose, recorded and played on the air throughout the day. And it was called Poetry on the Beat. And that was one of the most popular things actually that we did when I was with 97.3 The Beat. Yeah, Marcel Price, Fable the Poet, and a slew of other amazing poets. And as far as we know, that was the first time that had been done on any radio station in the country.
Let's go a little bit back to the music part. Did you highlight any new artists or up and coming artists? And
all the time, all the time, all the time. That was a part of what we did. We felt that Grand Rapids, as large of a city as it is, as it relates to the urban core, we felt that there was not a pronounced enough voice here in the community. And I'll tell you something, you show me a community of people of color without a unselfish, empowering urban radio station, the two go hand in hand. And so if you're going to have a strong urban core in your community, then you've got to have strong urban radio in your community. You won't find the two without each other in any city in America.
So even nowadays with people listening to all sorts of streamed music, you still firmly believe that having a strong urban radio station in a particular community is really helpful and helps empower and helps people be heard.
Not just powerful, but pertinent. And for Black folks in particular, radio, like I said, in a progressive city, radio is still the #1 source of information.
Great.
So you go to Chicago, you go to Los Angeles, you go to New York, you go to Indianapolis, other cities that have, even in Muskegon, other cities that have progressive radio stations, they're more likely to have a progressive urban community. So it's pertinent.
And you talking about that sort of, for me, I'm Latina, and I grew up in Los Angeles. So, the Spanish radio station is a very important part of the community, and everywhere around different communities, like you said, there's channels of communication that sometimes I think get overlooked. The different ethnic radio stations, in particular, like you said, the urban core, the Black radio stations as well. So that's something that we'll need to explore further. Well, great. So let's switch a little bit to another form of media. You had a film project or documentary, Black Man. My understanding through talking with different people is that it's very challenging to obtain funding for any type of film project, especially ones that are not what people would call commercial. What inspired you to make the documentary Black Man?
I gotta be frank with you. The Muskegon Museum of Art commissioned me to do a 5-minute loop for a still photography project that they were doing called Sons. And I was gonna do a 5-minute loop. I was hired to do a 5-minute loop, but as I continued to interview the guys who would agree to be a part of this 5-minute loop that I was doing, I realized that it was more than just a 5-minute loop and that we potentially had a full-blown documentary. So I went in and in that instant, I went in and renegotiated with the Muskegon Museum of Arts. They agreed, and lo and behold, we came up with a documentary. But the interesting part of that is that I wrote a treatment for a project called Fathers long time ago, many years ago, and it's always been at the forefront of my mind. And Black Man was a lot like the project that I had wanted to do called Fathers. I'd even had meetings about it. I met with folk in LA about it just as recently as about 5 years ago. So it's interesting how this project came about right here in the area, the town. I was born in Muskegon, born and raised between Muskegon and Grand Rapids my entire life. But it's interesting how the project, pretty much very similar to what I'd always wanted to do, came right out of Muskegon, Michigan. So that's how the project came about. And so the funding came about as a result of the good folks at the Muskegon Museum of Art believing in what it is that I saw and what it is that I wanted to do.
You know, what's really interesting is even before all the unrest and all the demonstrations and protests, some organizations were already recognizing the importance of expanding the voices that they hear from. What other experiences have you had with that? You know, like especially like what are you doing right now? What are you up to?
Well, the film, and let me back up a second. What's happening? What's happening in America right now? It's been happening in America. This is not anything new. This just happens to be 2020, and we're living in the modern era of technology. Everybody has cell phones with cameras on it, so a lot of stuff is just coming to the forefront. So when you talk about a project like Black Man, for example, and the things that the guys talk about in the film, which are happening right now in 2020, those things happened in 2017 and 16 and 15 and 1998 and 1974 and so on. So the film is very timely, but it's always been timely. Anytime you sit down and talk to a group of men who share openly and honestly about their experiences, it will be timely, but it's up to, I guess, the viewers to decide on whether or not it's timely, which is subjective. So what I'm doing currently is, just prior to COVID-19, I was actually touring with the documentary all over the country. We had 5 screenings in February in Los Angeles. We were supposed to be back in Los Angeles for a screening in April. We had screening scheduled courtesy of Spectrum Health, and that was in March and April, and I was supposed to be back in June. Anyway, all over the place. So what I'm doing primarily is I'm going to be in Florida in a couple of days screening the film. But what I'm doing is just working hard to make sure that as many people see the film as possible, and hoping to find new outlets so that the film can be seen, and so much of the country has been shut down. So I've been working primarily this year, up until COVID, on the film, making sure people see it. And now I'm working on that again. Of course, we're shut down pretty much because of COVID, but the film is very relative to what's going on now. So my part is making sure that people see the film, and hopefully we'll have a screening of the film at the March on Washington in August, the last weekend of August. We're hoping to have a screening that Saturday, which is August 29th in DC.
Great. Is there any way that, you know, people viewing this or other people are able to see or watch your film?
We're working on that. So we're working on that just prior to COVID-19. I think it was March 9th, that Monday. I had a meeting in Los Angeles, and so it was our hope that the film would be seen on an international streaming service. But of course, COVID struck that down, and so we're working hopefully on re-engaging that conversation. And so we'll see. If not, there's an organization here in Kent County that I've been working with, and we're trying to figure out some way to do the things that we had planned to do in March and April, sponsored by Spectrum Health. So we don't know what that looks like exactly, but we're working on it. So we do have a Facebook page. It's titled Black Man. film. So if you type in the word Black Man Film, just type it all together, all three words, type them together, no spaces, and you can see reviews of the film. You can visual reviews as well as written reviews. You can see the trailer for the film. You can see write-ups about the film, what other people are saying that have seen the film, etc. And also all the screening dates are always listed on that page as well. So you can get all the information you want if you're watching this and you're interested in seeing the film or hearing about when it will be available to be seen again. Go to that page and it'll have all that information there.
That's great. We will make sure that that information is posted on our website. But also, please let us know as soon as it's available to be seen, streamed, so that we can let our Facebook friends, as well as putting it on our website. So let me make another switch to another form of media, reading. I know that you're growing up, I was considered a bookworm. And so I read tons of books all the time. And I'm really intrigued by you starting a nonprofit called Men of Color Read. Can you share with us a bit of the story about that and how you're able to get that going, as well as the effect that it had on the participants? Hello? Joan, you froze. So
I'm sorry, you broke up. Could you repeat that question real quick?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, because you froze too. So we talked about, I'm interested in you starting this nonprofit, Men of Color Read. Can you share with us how you got that started and the effect and impact that it's had on the participants, both the men and the young men that were part of that, or are part of that?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Men of Color Read came about 10 years ago in Los Angeles. I created an organization titled MOKIDI, which is Men of Color in the Industry. You kind of see a common thread in the things that I'm a part of and the things that I do. Men of color, Black men. But anyway, men of color in the industry comprised of entertainers, actors, writers, producers, directors, agents, composers, animators, the whole gamut of men in the industry. But the reason I created the organization was not just so that we could come together, but so that we could be a difference in our communities. I think that if you really want to be productive in your community, and you want your community to be better, then you've got to serve in some capacity. And we created this organization. The very first thing we did, literally within 2 weeks of creating the organization, was we adopted an elementary school in South Central LA. And one of the things that we did was, as we went in at that time, we went in every Friday to read to the kids. And so about 5 years after that, I was doing an interview. I was on radio with Paul Billings out of Muskegon, 103.7, and he said to me, "There's no way that you can have this going in LA and not doing it in your hometown." And so that was 5 years ago. So we adopted Edgewood Elementary School in Muskegon Heights, and we've been there for 5 years. And this year, at the beginning of this year, we started our first school in Kent County in partnership with the Kent District Library, and that's over at King School. So we had other plans, and we're also actually working on something else with Kent District Library that we're going to be starting next week, actually. But anyway, it's just as it sounds, Men of Color Read. And so men of color, men who look like me, we go into the school on a regular basis and we read. One of the things that we do know is that the majority of our kids who are part of the juvenile delinquency system are functionally illiterate. We know that the majority of our prison inmates are functionally illiterate, and illiteracy is, I think, there may be some other things that are just as important, but I don't think there's anything more important than illiteracy in our communities. And it's going to take us. I don't feel that anybody's coming into our communities on a white horse to save the day. If the day is going to be saved, it's up to us to do it. And so it's going to take men to go in our community, to go into the schools, et cetera, and be the difference. And reading is something that I started doing very young. That's kind of how I escaped from what was going on in my own life as a kid. And I would escape. I would go to the library, and I was just an avid reader. And I think reading for me probably saved my life, if I could just be frank about that. And it's open to all men, but I wanted to encourage men of color to go in and read. The truth of the matter is, kids see 1% or less than that of Black men in the classroom, K through 12. And that goes for cities like Detroit and other cities. So it's very uncommon for a kid to see a Black man in the classroom. Well, with Men of Color Read, we changed that. So it was something that I created because I felt that it was necessary. We have a Facebook page also. It's Men of Color Read. It's just that simple. Men of Color Read. Excuse me. You type all that in together, and you can see our Facebook page and the things that we do and are involved in, and all are welcome to come and participate. Shout out to the Kent District Library, who's been a great partner here in Kent County.
Great. So you actually took away the question I was going to ask you. If someone wanted to get involved in doing that right now, just go to your Facebook page, Men of Color Read. And
absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can leave us a message, or you can write right on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Fabulous. Yeah, and I know that the Kent District Library is also focusing on a lot of different types of outreach to all different parts of the community. So making all sorts of resources available. So it's great to hear that you're involved with that. And it's also good to hear that Spectrum Health is helping sponsor or trying to get your documentary, your documentary Black Man screened locally. I know that recently they had a Day of Understanding on Juneteenth, which I thought was quite remarkable for an organization that size to be and doing so much critical healthcare work in our communities, to take a moment to pause, to have people think about and hear from colleagues who are exactly like them, except their skin color is different. And so the experiences that they've had are different, just like all of us. And this is a unique moment in time where our voices can be heard widely without and accept what we say and what we think without what I would consider shutting down, like has happened in the past. So, Jon,
I agree.
Are there any parting thoughts that you would like to share with us?
No. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I would like to say thank you to Ovell Barbie and the whole staff over there at Spectrum Health, who believe that Black man is something that should be seen, and Rodney Robinson and All Pact and all those good folk who are helping to make sure that the documentary is seen. But no, other than that, just thank you very much. I really appreciate it. The time went by very quickly.
It does. I keep looking at the clock. Like, wow, it's that time already? So
hopefully you'll have me back again.
Well, I hope so, especially once you can tell us about your adventures. So I will then finish up.
I've had many.
Yeah. So hang on for a little bit after. I will chat for a couple minutes after the show, please. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank everyone for watching. What I'd like to do now is just remind everyone that we have our summit is coming up, and I'm looking for my different banners. So here we go. Here's our summit information, which is coming up on July 21st. You can register for Summit by going to our website, ethnicdiversity.org. For those of you that are watching, we actually have an app that will allow you to log into the app. It's from a company called Whova, WHOVA, and you will be able to see everything and participate in Summit. The easiest way to do that is through your laptop or your computer. Doing it on a mobile phone gives you a much smaller screen. So it is not necessary to have a mobile phone to be able to watch and participate in Summit. Again, Summit is July 21st of 2020. Please go on our website and register through there. In the meantime, please stay looking at our Facebook page as well as our constant contact emails that we send you. We're working on getting our next guest lined up for next week. Someone sounds quite interesting. So thank you all so much and have a great afternoon.